What's going on, everyone? Welcome back along to the channel. Today is part 2 in this exciting little mini-series where we try and predict our international teams for the up-and-coming June internationals. You've already seen the All Blacks. If you haven't, I suggest you go back and check that out first. We predicted the 33-man squad for the All Blacks, as it should be named in a few days' time, about a week's time from when you'll be watching these. And now today, we're being joined by Brett, our local South African, Australian, wherever he is, but mainly South African expert, joining us on the channel to have a look at who we think is going to be in the Springboks team for the June International. So welcome along, Brett. Thanks for joining us for this little look at the Springboks.
Yeah, cheers for having me, man. It's going to be good to be on one of your videos without showing how bad my Super Brew is this season, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, we're not talking about Super Brew, even though, you know, the yellow cap is still here, so don't worry. It's not going. No one else is getting it now. It's always going to be mine, my yellow cap. So, you've picked your Springboks squad. I've picked a few guys who I think are possibly lucky or unlucky to, well, possibly unlucky to miss out. And possibly we'll talk about why you've gone with the guys you have, why you've left out the guys that haven't made the team, and just overall talk about the squad and how we think we're going to go this year as well for these players coming from Super Rugby. And of course, we'll talk about it first now. We can pick players from anywhere in South Africa. So the Springboks had a 30 cap rule. They had to have obviously 30 caps to play if you're going to be selected from outside of South African Super Rugby. This season, new coach as well. Talk is that if there is a good reason, so that with inverted speech marks, so who knows what he's going to say? I mean, what do you do when you go to the SA Rugby Board and say, well, I'd quite like to pick player XYZ because, I think he's had a good season? That's the reasoning they're given. But how do you think that's going to influence the changes in the South African team?
Yeah, it's probably, first of all, I think it's probably a good thing that they sort of repealed that. It only lasted, I think it was only brought in like 2016 after the World Cup, so it really wasn't around for long. And I think it's good. I think they should still reward loyalty and reward the local players in regards to, you know, who gets to start and who gets to nod at different selections. But I do think it's vital to bring some of these guys like your Pat Lambys, and guys like that who provide really vital experience and are still in awesome playing form. Guys like Dwayne Vermeulen as well. So it's good to be able to pick them. I think those two would still be over the threshold anyway without the 30 cap rule. But, you know, it's good to have more depth, especially right now with the state of South African rugby. It's good to have this vital experience still available to the team.
Do you think it's going to benefit the Springboks this year and in the future?
Yeah, I think it will. Like I said, they should still reward the players who are playing for the South African unions, but at the same time, you know, Rusty Rasmus, the new coach, is going to really have to build a strong culture, and he's going to have a strong leadership group with that. And a lot of these guys that are playing overseas have been in the Springboks quite a while, so guys like that, a strong leadership group is really key to your whole culture as a team. So I think it will benefit the Springboks in the long run.
It's interesting because the last few days I've actually spoken to a lot of people about in New Zealand here with the way that players leaving has been a big topic, as it always is around this time of year and further on Super Rugby. But the experienced guys leaving doesn't give that tutoring sort of player, you know, the 45-year-old front rowers, those little squires and at inside centre that are 36. Yeah, that experience you're getting from those guys isn't really there so much, and we've got a lot of young guys just coming through with other young guys. There's no real teaching going on. The old tricks are sort of being lost in the books, as it were. So there's something that I guess South African could definitely take advantage of by having a few of these guys hanging around from the olden days, teaching them a few tricks here and there as well. But let's get started. Let's have a look at this team. So you've picked your side, so I'll let you go through your selections as we go through each position and defend why they're there before I try and attack from the other side. So you've picked 34. You've gone with 5 props into your team to kick you off. So why have you gone with these 5, and who have you gone with?
So with the props, I've gone for the Tenai Matarira, the Beast. I've gone for from the Sharks. I've gone for Vukalo from the Stormers. I've gone for Trevor Newcarney from the Bulls. I've also got Frans Maherbe in there from the Stormers, and then I got Lizo Goboka from the Bulls.
You look through that and you probably say Ntawera probably a sure thing, as long as he's fit. But the rest of that front row, I mean, aren't always 100% guaranteed players to be in a Springbok squad. So there's a lot of other guys, which I'll mention next, that probably could be worthy to be in the squad themselves. But what's given these guys the nudge for you?
I think the main guy, besides obviously, like you said, the Beast is just a given. He will start for the Springboks, and he has been since when he made his debut in 2008. He's just been that consistent guy, that consistent leader, and then he's actually had this form of his last 5 years this season. He's been, and I actually was giving him quite a lot of slack. But when I previewed the South African conference, I was talking down quite a bit when I previewed it with you, and he's proved me really wrong. And he's had an awesome season. He's doing stuff like running the ball again and getting quite a lot of meters when he runs the ball. Second guy to him, I reckon, is Wilco Low from the Stormers. He had an awesome Currie Cup season last year, and he's having an awesome Super Rugby campaign this year at the Stormers. And he's a really young guy on that loose head side. That tie head side, should I say? And I think he should be starting at 3. His scrummaging is really good. He's a big, solid guy, and he's pretty safe with the ball in hand as well, and he can gain quite a lot of meters should he get the ball. I've also got Trevor Nyakane. I haven't been the biggest fan of him in his whole career, but I think John Mitchell has had a really positive effect on him this year at the Bulls. If you look at his physical, his physical condition, his physical shape, he's a lot fitter this year, and he's a lot more slim and trim, and he's a lot better with the ball in hand now, and his scrummaging is just getting better from year to year. So I've been really impressed with him this season, and the Bulls actually really missed him when they played the Stormers last week and that loss to the Stormers. So really valuable guy in there, probably coming off the bench. Which these other ones, Frans Maherba, pretty much just a replacement for the Beast. He hasn't played that much rugby this year, as we were talking off camera. But he's a solid scrummager. He's also another young guy there that the SA Rugby can really develop. And Liza Govoka, not many people know much about him. I haven't followed him that closely, but I do know that he is a very solid prop, and probably won't be in the match day 23, but very good guy to have in your training squad.
Most of that squad, or most of that front row, I should say, you've picked on form, which is, I mean, a good thing that you want to do as well, is pick your team that is performing at the top of their game. Arguments against those guys, I've got a few here that would probably want to be included. Kitchoff from the Stormers, another pretty young guy, I guess, pretty similar to Mahalba as well. Dreyer from the Lions, Van Rooyen, the two props from the Lions as well. De Toy from the Sharks. Now, these three names, actually, De Toy, Kunaesterhuizen, and Ox Nietzsche, if that's how you say it, from the Cheetahs, Oosthuizen from the Cheetahs as well. Those three guys all in a South African training camp as well, that they have been making place for. So does that tell you anything that those guys possibly are being looked at, maybe in the future, but not quite today?
Yeah, it's firstly I'm quite a big fan of Thomas Du Toit. I think this season he hasn't been great. It doesn't help that in the beginning of the season, Robert Dupree Senior thought it was a good idea. Obviously, him being a professional loose head prop, thought it would be a good idea to move on to the tie head to make way for the Beast come in. And you would think it's simple, and it's really not. The two sides of the scrum are very different, and he really struggled at the beginning of the season playing that number 3 jersey. So that's the main reason I didn't select him. And Kuni Oosthuizen, a big fan of him. He was awesome at the Sharks last year. Main reason I haven't picked him, and it's not really his fault. I haven't really followed the Cheetahs this year very closely in the Pro 14, very loosely. So I wasn't quite sure of his form, which is probably the main reason I didn't pick him. But at the same time, those props I have picked, I'll probably still put ahead of Kuni in the end.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because it's such a different competition. The Pro 14 is a different style of rugby, Super Rugby. And would you want, possibly these guys from the Cheetahs playing in the Pro 14, given that they are facing Northern Hemisphere opposition, maybe to bring some of that experience back is possibly some of the reasoning by why that they've gone with those guys in the training camp. But form alone, you have to say that's a pretty solid front row. As we go through this, of course, anyone in the comments, leave us what you think about the squad as well, and if you think players do deserve to be in this selected squad, which I'm not actually sure when the Springboks are sticking their team. I know the All Blacks are on Sunday the 20th of May. And I expect the Springboks and the Wallabies will be about that same time as well. So those guys, yeah, unlucky to miss out, but I wouldn't be surprised to see possibly one of those Cheetahs players you probably mentioned in this days, and the guy that could sneak in, given his experience of playing at that higher level as well, at the Pro 12 of the Northern Hemisphere players. Okay, so that's 5 of us done. 5 props in the team already. Hookers. Now, this is an interesting one. Now, it's a bit of a debatable area at the moment. Now, you've gone with 2 probably solid ones, and one a bit left field. But what's going to mix this up is you have gone with Malcolm Marx. I mean, who wouldn't go with Malcolm Marx? He's probably one of the best players in the world right now, let alone one of the best hookers in the world. From the Lions. Question marks over his fitness, whether he's going to be fit for this series. So we'll leave him in there for now. Akavanamova, you've got it from the Sharks. Yep, reasonable, decent selection. But the one probably is going to draw the most discussion will be everyone's old mate, Bismarck du Plessis from Montpellier. Brett, explain yourself.
Yeah, you've given me quite a bit of stick for that already, but I'll explain myself. Like you said, those first 2 are just no-brainers. Whether Malcolm Marx is healthy or not, I think Bongi Manumbi, if Marx is out, I think Manumbi is a suitable replacement as well. Not in the matchday 23, but in the reserves, really good season with the Stormers this year. But that's the Bismarck thing. Hooker right now in South Africa, it's not one of our deepest positions. Obviously, we've got, in my opinion, the best hook in the world right now, Malcolm Marx. And then after that, Akafanamava is really solid. He's having an awesome season with the Sharks. But at the same time, Bismarck, obviously he's experienced. He's one of those guys I was sort of alluding to when I said you need a strong leadership group. And he's been there. He's been to 3 World Cups now, and he's really done the long yards. But at the same time, he's still not that old. And he's still a very physical, fit specimen, and he's been playing quite well with Montpellier under his old coach Jake White there. So he actually is in form right now, and it's sort of a bit of bias as well. I've been a Sharks fan my whole life, and Bismarck has always sort of been there. And for a good portion of his career, he was the best hooker in the world and was regarded so by many people. So he's a really good guy, very physical guy, really gets through a lot of work. He's an absolute workhorse. And really, especially coming off the bench as well, or if you don't even want to play him in the 23, just having him in the reserves, having him in the training squad, just leading those guys, mentoring guys like Akafanamava, Malcolm Marx, Bongi Manumbi, people like that. Just a mentoring role if you don't want to play him. But like I said, if you do decide to play him, he is still a match fitness and he is still in good form.
So many people will be asking the question that has been bandied about a lot in these first 12, 13 rounds of Super Rugby. And it's the form of Adrian Strauss and the possible out of retirement for the man who, like you say, the middle of the front row hasn't been the biggest area of depth at the moment for South African rugby.
Yeah.
A lot of talk about him coming out, showing great form. Why doesn't he even make a consideration for that hooker role?
Oh, well, one of the reasons he actually hasn't officially said he's coming out of retirement for international rugby yet. So that's a big reason. And I think sort of everyone's thinking because he is in good form, don't get me wrong, that he will just naturally come back after announcing his retirement just last season. He could maybe that sort of maybe having in mind that he doesn't have to play test matches this season, he's putting a lot more into training for the Bulls, and he's putting a lot more into performances because he knows he gets a big gap in June. He knows he gets a gap June when the Rugby Championship is starting, and obviously he probably will play Currie Cup, but that's nowhere near the level you need to be for a Test match. So he hasn't actually said he's coming out of retirement. If he does, you should definitely consider him. I haven't always been the biggest fan of Strauss. He makes some pretty questionable calls in Test matches, but I guess so does Bismarck though. So I might be being a bit of a hypocrite, but I just think I'd prefer Bismarck in the squad than Strauss at this point. But like I said, he actually hasn't said that if he's come out of retirement yet. So it's still up for debate.
You might as well go with what you've got rather than bring back an old horse who's already set sail into the sunset. Great season. I guess, I don't know if you call him a legend of South African rugby, but definitely one of the memorable players who will go down in history as one of the better ones. Other guys to consider, I've only got really a couple aside from Strauss. One is based on my thoughts, and that is Samuels from the Stormers. I thought it's had a stunning season so far this year. But another one from the training camps that the Springboks have been having, Chili Boy Relapelli. Either of those guys worthy of getting in there. I think Samuel's on form. Relapelli, though, I was a bit surprised that he's even been looked at.
Yeah, he's been coming off the bench behind Akifana. He's been pretty good. He's pretty good last season for the Sharks as well. But yeah, he's a bit past it. He's been playing quite a while now, so wouldn't really consider him there. Another old guy, and Samuel's definitely a very strong player, and then he could fit into the squad with MSCB.
If you swap out Bismarck for me and put Samuels in there, that would be my squad. That would be my team. That's a real strange training camp for me to have Relapelli in there. I didn't think he's not featured too often this season, and hasn't really been much of a player who's made great exposure at Super Rugby level either. So that's your front row. Let's move into the second row. Now, I guess South African rugby pretty much chooses itself in this sort of level.
Yep.
And you've gone with pretty much what you'd expect. Like I say, chooses itself. Even it's a beef with Diego, Peter Steff to Toit, and Franco Mostert from the Lions. That possibly the easiest position you had to pick?
Yeah, without a doubt. Only question was picking Etzebeth, considering he actually hasn't played this season. But South Africa, normally if you have a guy like Etzebeth, the Springbok selectors don't really mind. They did it with Lambie 2 years ago, which didn't pay off very well. He actually got injured straight away after he came back. But yeah, I think he will be selected. If he is fit by then, he's just a world-class player, and he could easily come back from injury. I've never really seen him have a dip in form. So I think he will be there. If he's injury-free, he definitely will be in that squad. And then just the other three guys, you just can't overlook them. Lud Diaka, awesome player, having a really good season with the Bulls, playing in a really good Bulls pack there. And then Franco Mostert, probably one of the better locks in South Africa right now. I'm really frustrated this season with the Lions playing at flanker so much. I really hate it when they also do that with Peter Steff du Toit as well at the Stormers. I really don't like it when locks are moved to the loose forwards. I think locks should be locks, and then that's what they should train in. Otherwise, they start getting confused with their different positions and roles during the game. So I like Mostert when he stays as lock. He's one of the smaller locks, but that doesn't stop him from being absolutely dominant lineouts, and he's calling all the Lions lineouts as well. So really good guy to have in your lineup there. Peter Steff du Toit, just a class player. And I think another one who could be considered from recent performances is Ryan Borter, the Sharks captain. Didn't have a very great start to the season, but has been absolutely awesome for the last few games, especially last week against the Highlanders. He's awesome in loose play, really nimble guy for his size, and has a really good passing game. So he could also be considered there, but those guys I just mentioned, you can't really go past them.
Well, it's been interesting what we've seen from the Bulls this season in Super Rugby. Do you think the Springboks are going to adapt that same sort of thing, what we've seen from Luke Diago with his running and offloading game? Do you think they're going to try to adapt that with the rest of those guys in the second row?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's the modern game now. Your forwards have to be able to run, have to be able to pass, have to be able to create plays. It's just the way the game's going now, and New Zealand are largely responsible for that. New Zealand forwards are very nimble, very agile, and can pass, as well as most backs from other countries. I'm not really too familiar with teams coached by Rassie Erasmus. I'm not sure what style he want to implement. He might go the sort of John Mitchell route that he's been going. Letting the forwards sort of pound the line, and then once the line starts to weaken, get off to your backs, or he might try to go what sort of Brad Thorne's doing at the Reds, and focus on just purely traditional forward play and hope that wins matches for you. I probably prefer the first option. It's just working for most South African teams this year, as most of them are playing the more expensive style. When a team like the Bulls radically change, that there's something new happening in South Africa when the Bulls are playing expensive rugby. So I think he will look at the Bulls, the Lions, the Sharks, and the Stormers. all playing very similar brands of rugby, and it's been largely successful for them this year. And obviously, accumulating a few beatings on New Zealand sides this year. So I think he will try and play more expensive, and with those forwards, they're going to be able to create plays and they're going to be able to pass.
I didn't really have anyone too much to add on the second row. I thought, like I said earlier, it picked itself. Only names I wrote down, and I wouldn't even put them in my squad, would be Mostert's partner at the Lions and Ferreira, and probably Lewis from the Sharks was a name I threw about, but I don't think either of those guys are really up to the standard of what they've got in those four already, who are just next level. I think, especially those first three, Itzabeth, Diaka, and Detoy are just... They are top-tier international rugby players. Mostert's getting there, and I think he will be up there in time, but he just kind of rounds off that second row nicely. So I can't argue with that one too much at all. So we'll move into the back row. Now, for the back row, we've gone with... What are you going with there? Another interesting selection here, but you have 5 players again. Your captain's in here as well, which you've named as Warren Whiteley from the Lions, Sai Khaleesi, Jean-Luc Deprez, Quagga Smith, and Dane Vermeulen from Toulon.
Yeah.
Similar situation here to Bismarck. But Vermeulen's always been a powerhouse player. And, I mean, he's been at Toulon for a while now. And possibly time for a comeback, you think?
Yeah. Firstly, Warren Whiteley, obviously he's been injured for the last couple of weeks. I think it's probably... verging on maybe 5 or 6 weeks now. I can't even remember the last time he played, but whenever he plays, he's absolutely class. He's one of the better runners of the ball, and he's just his most valuable asset is just his leadership. He's an absolutely awesome captain, and you can definitely tell the Lions are better when he's on the field, just purely because of his leadership abilities. He just lifts all the players around him. He's just an inspirational leader. Jean-Luc Deprez and Sai Khaleesi have definitely been, if they're not the best, they're definitely up there with the best flankers this year in Super Rugby. They've just been absolutely outstanding just with running the ball. Jean-Luc Deprez, I've been very, very, very impressed with him this year. Just his ability to just create plays out of nothing, take contact, break through contact, offload it. His combination with his brother Robert Deprez this year has been awesome. The amount of tries have been created of him breaking the line and then offloading to his brother and letting his brother run through for a try. He's been absolutely incredible. Quagga Smith, bit of a cult hero on your channel. He's also just another class player. Very mobile. Definitely smaller than your average back rower, but he makes up for it with his speed and his strength. Obviously, being able to play sevens to the level he does. He's just a good player, and he's one of those players that can really adapt from 7s to 15s very easily. And I think if Warren Whiteley is not there to play number 8, I think Quagga Smith should probably be given the nod at number 8, or maybe 7 and move Jean-Luc Deprez to 8. Awesome player. And then obviously your big talking point there, Dane Vermeulen. Sort of a similar situation for Bismarck, although he's probably still in the prime of his career. He's not too old. He's been playing some really good rugby at Toulon, and a lot of South African fans think that he should actually be the captain of the Springboks. So I'm not one of those people. I think Whiteley should still be a captain, but awesome player. Just the form that he was in that 2013 to 2015 period. He was one of the best players in the world. Definitely the best player for the Springboks in that period. He was just an awesome player. So if he can pick up that form that he did then, he could be our starting number 8.
Interesting. I mean, we know what sort of player Vermeulen is, and aside from him, the captain thing is probably what I found most interesting about your comments. But what I find for captain is the first priority of a captain, obviously, is a leader and all that stuff. He has to command a presence in the dressing room, but he's got to play in the matches. Yeah, he's got to start. Yeah, it's hard to say that whether Vermeulen is going to come back into that team and demand a starting spot over the likes of Whiteley or whatever configuration they go with that back row. But aside from well, I mean, I can't really argue with any of them, really. I agree. Khaleesi, I think, has been in an amazing form. He's been a standout for the Stormers this year. He's been just fantastic. Quagga Smith, I'd never argue with that, even if he played terribly. One thing I would say is not put the two Priya brothers together, as in Daniel.
Yeah. Yeah, the reason I didn't put Daniel Priya in there is because he just hasn't played much rugby. I think actually last week against the Highlanders was his first week back, or maybe his second week back. So hasn't played much rugby at all, and he's not at that level yet where you guys like your Evan Etzebest will be able to come into the team after being injured for a long period of time. He just hasn't proven much in the green jersey yet. Awesome player. But at the same time, I definitely rate Jean-Luc du Preez as the better of the twins, even though both of them are very dynamic. Blockbuster players, I still rate Jean-Luc the better one, but obviously not too far behind as his brother. So that's the main reason I didn't select Dan du Preez.
The only other real players of note that I've looked at in my researching time here of watching Super Rugby is probably the rest of the Stormers back row. Nizam Carr and Nochi coming from the Stormers as well. Again, this is much like Sekiro, I think, for me. I'll say Daniel du Preez, a good enough player, if fit and ready to go. Carr as well has definitely been in there before and done the job, but probably not had the standout season that he probably need to get back into that Springbok side. But I think he's probably the closest. But his combination that he's had when playing alongside Khaleesi has been pretty good. And I think the Stormers have owed a lot of, especially that home form when they've been playing quite well, to that back row that has performed quite well for them in home matches, which is, I'm going to state, only in home matches, because away from home, it's been not so good. But those guys still stand out, and it's always good. You always find your key players stand out when you're not going so well and when you are going well.
I think that back row as well is definitely, without a doubt, the deepest position in South Africa. Just got so many quality back rows. So the guys are left out. There's nothing. They're awesome players, but it just turns out they have players that are just simply better than them, and that's really no fault of their own.
Yeah, and you find there's a lot of places. I mean, going through that All Black team as well, good players miss out. But I mean, there's just better players who are that next level, and that's what you find when you go up to that sort of stage of international rugby. Well, that's our forward pack done. Anything to add on that pack? I think we've gone pretty in depth there on those front 8 positions. So we'll move on to the back line. Scrum halves, halfbacks, wherever you come from, whatever you call them. 3 selected here from you. I'll let you go through these guys and why you've chucked these 3 in the deep end.
Yeah, so I've got, I think the main guy who I'm starting to think that 30 cap rule was actually made for, sort of like how the Giddo rule was named after Matt Giddo in that for the Wallabies in the 2015 crowd. I think this should be called the 50 clack rule, because I think that's one of the reasons that they wanted that rule to be made, or rule repealed, should I say. 50 clack obviously hasn't been given the nod in the Springbok jersey. I have no idea why. And I think he was robbed last year of a starting spot at the Lions as well. For some reason, Johan Ackerman preferred Ross Cronje, which chased him north to the Sail Sharks, where he's been in absolute blockbusting form over there. He's just an incredible player, small guy, but it's just incredible. The pace of the ball, which he picks the ball from the ruck, and just distributes the ball. It's just something that you need from your scrum half in modern day. Guys like Aaron Smith are extremely good at that. Just quick distribution, quick decisions, and also good decisions at the same time. So he is, without a doubt, the best South African scrum half. Don't even try arguing with me. Anyone else, I would say he's the undisputed best scrum half in South Africa, and I think that should be widely known around all South Africa's fans, especially with this form. And so he's even goal kicking for Sale this year. So no, he's doing everything over there. Awesome, playing with some good players at Sale as well. So he's been great. Ross Cronje, he's been good this year. Obviously, Nick Groom was signed by the Lions this year and has been getting the nod over Cronje. I'm not sure whether that's due to injury or just general form. But Ross Cronje, good player, good tactician. But I think my only gripe with him is he just takes too long to get the ball out of the ruck. He's sort of the polar opposite of Faf de Klerk. And I've got Devout Duvenaka. and should we invite the Australian commentators to try and say his name? Drew Mitchell, Stephen Hoyles. That was pure comedy. Them hearing them trying to say that name, but yeah, he's been awesome. Good young scrum half for the Stormers. Try some dodgy things from time to time, such as like hooking the ball out of the scrum when the ref's not looking. But yeah, he's been good for the Stormers and a good young guy in there. And just the scrum half position is definitely the least deep in South Africa. We're sort of having a crisis right now of our good scrum halves going over north. So I think these three are decent guys who can get the job done.
It's interesting you mentioned that because I've in the All Blacks video, which most of you should have watched by now. If you haven't already, go check it out. I have picked Tahurirangi in my team, which if you follow media surrounding the All Blacks, they got in trouble for calling him Triple T. Hanson calling him Triple T instead of saying Tahurirangi. So I'm looking forward to him going to Australia, where those clowns can sit there and go and stumble over their own words.
Duvananji.
Exactly. The more difficult names. I mean, that's the only reason I selected him, to hear that. But yeah, Faf de Klerk, electric player. I cannot disagree with that. And he's someone who adds attacking spark into a team as well. Cronje, definitely much more old school style of player, isn't he? A forward scrum half, rather than, I'd say Faf is a backs scrum half. Other guys I've gotten here, one which is really interesting that I want to get your thoughts on. Not these first two though. Ruan Pienaar from Montpellier has been touted around as being the form scrum half in South Africa as well. Louis Schroeder from the Sharks, another one from your man. But the guy that's been picked for the training camp, this one did surprise me most of all. Cameron Wright. I've hardly seen him, and I think probably missed a game, maybe per weekend on average of watching the whole games, and I hardly can recognise this guy's name.
Yep. Obviously I'm a bit more familiar with him being a Sharks fan, but I do understand why you haven't seen much of him. He doesn't, in regards to actually attacking, running the ball, tactical kicking, he doesn't provide much. He does a few silly box kicks from time to time, but he's a good passer of the ball. He's a good decision maker, and he leaves most of the sort of attacking plays just to Rob de Preer. Likes to find Rob de Preer as much as he can. And it's his first season. He's been good. He hasn't been great. Which is surprising that a lot of the time the Springboks select guys like Wright, who they think might develop into a good player later, add them into training camp so they can get some experience. Won't ever see play. I wouldn't say ever, but they were not selected with a sort of mindset that they will be playing this year for the Springboks. And he's one of those guys, good player, not a great player yet. Obviously, it's his first starting season with the Sharks. Now that guys like Reinach have cleared out and gone overseas, so he's been good this season, but definitely won't be selected in the squad.
It's you'd expect that they see something in this kid that for the future that they definitely want to keep a hold of and let him know that they're obviously he's in the thoughts for the future as well. It would be a massive shock if they went for someone like him. Yeah. On the other side of the scale, the experience of Ruan Pienaar, a possibility. I mean, we're almost going back to this old man South Africa, aren't we? That we really. I'm pretty sure me and you did videos of this a couple of years ago where we really criticised the retirement home or the retirement village of the Springboks, where they just about picked everyone over 30. No room for that. A guy like him.
No, I think the first video I ever did on your channel was previewing the 2015 World Cup squad, and I think I was going on about how old and rubbish Pienaar was then. And you know, I've always had sort of a gripe with Pienaar. He was at the Sharks, played 9 and 10 for the Sharks for years, and he was a good player. I think a lot of the time it was a bit controversial, his dad being a Springbok selector. A lot of people thought that was one of the reasons he kept actually being selected for the Springboks, but that's probably a bit conspiracy theory type stuff that you don't really want to be talking about in rugby. But he's always been a good club rugby player. Always been good in Northern Hemisphere because his play style really suits the Northern Hemisphere. He's a very dominant kicking scrum half, and takes ages to get the ball out of the ruck and doesn't deliver any quick ball. I've always done my head in with him watching him play for the Springboks. It's just a stupid box kicks, especially against teams like the All Blacks, and then we'll be playing England as well, another good counter-attacking team. If you have a guy that just doesn't hesitate to box kick, and not good box kicks, it's like Aaron Smith does, but just stupid box kicks that go straight to the fullback, and if you have a guy, he'll play guys like Ben Smith and kick it straight down Ben Smith's throat, and they'll counter-attack and score off it. So not a fan of Pienaar. Good in Northern Hemisphere, maybe consider him for the end of year tour, but at the same time, selecting him is not going to improve the depth of this, scrum halves in South Africa. We need to develop young guys rather. So maybe a bit contradictory to what I said about Bismarck, but I've just never been a big fan of Pienaar.
And we know how much you love the box kick.
Hashtag ban the box kick.
Let's move on.
Can't stand it.
Let's move on from the scrum halves and have a look at the fly halves, which, I mean, honestly, I don't see much conversation going on here. You've picked the three, Andre Pollard from the Bulls, Robert de Pre from the Sharks, and you've come back with another foreign player, Pat Lambie from Racing 92. I can't really argue that too much. I don't really think you've got to probably defend this too much either, but those guys pretty much picked themselves for you, like the second rowers.
Yeah, Andre Pollard has really proved me wrong this season. I actually thought he was done with after he's been, he actually nearly lost an arm last year with his injury. So, he's definitely come back. I think a guy like John Mitchell is his ideal coach. He was stuck behind guys, like Nolis Moret, who wanted to kick the ball, wanted to be the traditional, nice border type traditional South African fly half, and that's just not what he is. He likes to run the ball. He likes good front forward ball. He likes to attack. And it's really showing a spark in his form. And right now, he's actually probably the starting Springbok fly half, which is I never thought I'd say. After 2015 on onwards, I never thought I'd say that again. But he's been awesome this season for the Bulls, and he's a big reason why the Bulls are performing at the level that they are. Robert de Pre had his doubters at the beginning of the season, had a few growing pains with the Sharks, but has really gelled well into this team now, and is just awesome. His goal kicking has been really good, which I didn't really rate his goal kicking when he first came to the Sharks, but he's been awesome this year. And then I remember that game against the Blues in Auckland this year where he kicked something stupid like 36 points or something like that, just because he took 3 points every time the opportunity presented himself, and got himself a really nice tally and scored a couple of tries as well. So really good. Sort of controversial one, some people would say, is Pat Lambie. I've always got a special place in my heart for old Pat Lambie. Being a Sharks fan and just feeling so bad from when he was injured time and time and time again. And it's good to see that he's picked up some good form at Racing 92, and he's actually playing the Champions Cup final this week. So good luck to Lambie. And I'm hoping he wins it for Racing against I think Leinster they're playing. So he's been in really good form, scored some really good tries, and touch wood injury free so far. So those three guys, a lot of people are calling for Willemse. I said in the last video I was with you last week that I don't think Willemse should be selected yet. Maybe in the training squad for the Rugby Championship, but I don't think he should play yet, primarily because in South Africa we have a sort of a bad habit of rushing young fly halves and young centres and into starting spots and them getting injured because their conditioning is not up to level. Up to that test match level. So I don't think he should be rushed into it. He's an awesome player, definitely the future in the fly-out position for South Africa. But I think he should be left playing for Stormers right now and left to develop, and then really play him when the time's right. So that's the reason I didn't select him.
And he was about the only one I could really even put a scope on adding into that team. But I mean, we've talked about a lot over the last couple of times we've been on the preview show for Super Rugby, and I think injury freeness, if that's even a word, is something that's going to be crucial for the number 10 jumper for the Springboks. If they keep the likes of Pollard and, say, de Pre and Lambie, if they go with those three fit, then they can let Willemse do his job and he can rest up, just focus on Super Rugby. And for a young guy like that, you don't need to overcomplicate things. If he goes away and plays for the Springboks, then he got to come back to Super Rugby again. A little bit of a focusing break and just staying on track of one goal will definitely do him good. I think. I mean, you see it with the All Blacks a lot of the time. A guy has a really good first season where he breaks onto the scene, doesn't always get selected. It's that second season where he can consistently do the same thing that will often see them break into the squad or break into a starting role or break in somehow to the team. So one good season doesn't make a player. We all know that. The second season blues syndrome just, is always a thing that's talked about. But he is a quality kid, quality player, and you definitely cannot see him not featuring for the Springboks in the future. I'm really interested to see how they'll use Robert du Preez, though, in the Springboks if he does get selected, because he is a very different player to what they mostly have in the number 10 jumpers. Either, like you say, kickers, which I mean is saying that is definitely for the good being faced away with, but he takes on the line and he keeps the ball alive, which is, I think is the biggest asset he has. And if he has big guys, Diaga, Du Toits, Quagga Smiths, I don't know, Whiteley's, Khaleesi's. I mean, Khaleesi, those guys have got wheels as well. I mean, we've seen in recent weeks that Sai Khaleesi is no slouch. He definitely has some pace. And if he can free up those guys by taking on the line, demanding two defenders on him, he's going to create overlaps out wide as well, which I think could be a huge asset to the season. Pollard, a good player, but I think he's a different player in the sense that he moves through space rather than create space. Technically on his feet a better player, whereas du Preez, being a bigger man, can definitely take on the line and keep it alive that way, demanding defenders on his shoulders. So that's the fly house. I can't disagree with anything there. But I mean, this gets pretty messy as we look to the rest of these guys. There's a lot of South African players in these back positions. So we'll start with the centres. Goodness me, you've gone with four of them.
Yep.
I'll leave your centres to you because I've got a couple that I think are worthy to be in the team.
Yep. So I think the two main guys I've got, and I think they should be the 12-13 combo. Jesse Creel, best form he's been in since 2015, where everyone thought he was the future outside centre, and I still think he is. But obviously, dip in form over the last couple of years, partly because he's been put in fullback, which I don't think is his natural position. And like Pollard, John Mitchell was just a better fit for him, and he's able to play some attacking rugby. And he's been playing extremely well and pairs really well with Andre Pollard. Another guy there, bit of a surprise. If I was talking about this last season, but Andre Esterhuizen, just a behemoth of a man, probably taller than most of the locks. I was looking at him post-match last week, lining up against Ruan Botha, who's the Sharks lock, and I think Esterhuizen was actually taller than him. Huge inside centre, just a huge physical guy, does have a decent pair of wheels on him as well, and he's just been amazing for the Sharks this year. He's provided some really good front forward ball. He's not scared of contacts. He takes on the line, often has three guys hanging off him, and he's still gaining meters. And he absolutely butchered a try against the Highlanders, but we won't talk about that. But other than that, he had a flawless game, and he was rewarded quite rightly so with the man of the match. So he's been awesome this year, and to have a big physical guy at 12 like him, and then have a guy like Creel who can really turn on the gas at 13, I think that's a really perfect combination. Sort of similar to the Manonu Conrad Smith duo for the All Blacks a couple of years ago. Not too similar, but sort of similar dynamic if we can get those two working together quite well. I've also got Lukanya, another Sharks guy, awesome outside centre, just pure pace, and he links up well with guys like and outside backs like Mapimpi and whatnot. So he's an awesome player, and he's had a good season last year. Was selected in the end of year squad. I think he got his debut as well. So he will have another strong season, and he probably will feature on the bench. Another guy, a bit of a surprise guy, not the best form this season, but I've gone with Ron Janssen from Rensburg. The primary reason why I've selected from Rensburg is just that he can cover both 12 and 13, which is quite a valuable skill to have in selection if you want to keep your sort of selection numbers down. So he's a good player. He hasn't been in greatest form this year, and he's quite fragile with in regards to injuries. So well, hopefully he picks up form because he's definitely a huge talent. And the Lions are definitely better when Jens van Rensburg is playing well. So, the reason I've picked him is just because he can slot into both positions quite easily.
Do you think there's a fear with a centre combination like those guys that your wingers will ever see the ball or never see the ball?
Yeah, I guess so. But at the same time, the Sharks wingers with guys like Esterhazen and have been quite productive this year with guys like Spoon Corsi and Mapimpi as well. So you definitely, the Bulls wingers this year haven't been overly great and haven't produced that many highlights. But on the flip side, the Sharks wingers have been quite good. So it depends, and it depends also how your fly half dictates play, and prioritizes really getting out to the ball to the wingers. So it will definitely be a trial and error thing.
Yeah, Jesse Krill's not the sort of guy who's going to pass you many opportunities out there on the wing, unfortunately. But still, probably deserves to be there. There's one guy I think deserves a mention to be in with a shout of this team. He is from the Bulls as well. Ordendale.
Yeah.
I mean, Ordendale and alongside, you've already got Esterhazen in there, which was the other one I was going to mention. But those guys were nobodies at the start of the season. You looked at the squad and go, yeah, I mean, there's not a direct combination. There's a hole, in those two teams with those guys when you look at them. But they've been fantastic, and I think those two have been the form centres for their respective sides.
Yeah, it's pretty much Ordendale has been a huge improver this season, and pretty much it's the same reason with the flankers. There's just players right now that are just better than him, and I think they deserve a shot above him. But that doesn't take away with what he's done this season for the Bulls.
Other guys I've thrown in the mix here, Delende from the Stormers. I mean, he's always a guy up there worthy of selection, and Mapu from the Lions as well. Probably not had his best year. He hasn't really been much of a big fire in that back line, but definitely a guy that's going to be in consideration. But we again look overseas. De Jong. Any thought those guys could sneak into the team? I personally would agree with yours, but possibly if anyone Ordendale I'd put in there. But those other three, Delende, I'm surprised if he wouldn't make it as well.
Yeah, firstly with Mapu and Delende, it's just consistency. Here's the main reason I didn't select him, especially with Mapu this year. He's battling for a starting spot at the Lions right now as well. So it's never really good to have a fringe club player, even if it is a deep team like the Lions. Have a guy who's competing there, let him pick up form and then see what his form's like at the end of the Super Rugby season, come into the Rugby Championship. Always a good guy to have in there, really dynamic guy. And with De Jong, Asian guy, has been playing overseas for the last 2 years, I think. Was in the South African 7 squads trying to get into the Olympics a couple of years ago. He's always struggled to get a Springbok spot. He's been around for quite a while now and has never really made that Springbok starting jersey his own. And I think still has the same struggles. Maybe just doesn't deliver on the test match stage, but good player, but I didn't really consider him too hard when I was selecting this team.
I think from what you've selected here, I think Esterhazen has taken Delende's spot.
Yeah.
If Esterhazen wasn't playing well, Ordendale wasn't playing well, I think that's where Delende would be coming in to combine with Krill and Rensburg as well. If that was the situation, but I think he's been played out just on form and consistency from those guys. I think he's dropped out for me outside of even the top 5 with what we've got there. So a good depth though. I think the Springboks need a bit of development in their middle in the midfield because we've got a lot of guys who are getting a bit stale there. Like the Creoles and Delendes and those. I mean, they come up with is good because he's another fresh air breath through that team. So, good things to them. I think they need to continue off that and pick guys on form like this Hazens as well. I completely agree with him. He's been amazing this season. Right, we're going on to the outside backs. You've split them up into wings and fullbacks. So, you've come away with 4 wingers. And I think these guys are pretty much no-brainers. My arguments for these are going to be shot down in flames because I don't even agree with what I'm saying. But who have you selected to go on the wings?
So I've gone to Piwa Deontay. Absolute for the first like 3 or 4 rounds. He was the absolute talking point of Super Rugby. He was probably the biggest star in Super Rugby for the first 4 rounds, just with the tries he was scoring. Absolutely awesome player, young guy. Bit of a dip in the middle of the season, partly due to injury, but he came back last week and had a pretty good performance. Even though Lions didn't perform very well. In general, awesome player. Ruan Combrink, another guy who's always just seems to be injured, but when he does play, he's just an awesome player. Big, strong guy who also has a huge amount of pace, and I think his goal kicking is very underrated as well. And it's always good to have someone in the squad who's not a fly half, who can take especially long range goal kicks. So it's always good, especially if they select Yankees, which I hope they don't, but I think they will. Having a guy who can kick the ball is a good thing, because Yankees is not a goal kicker at all, and I'm hoping he won't be in the squad, but he probably will be. So what do I know? Marcus Zola, my PMP, he's just awesome. He was sort of the Piwa Deontay of last year with the Kings. Scored some amazing tries, and when the Kings were kicked out of Super Rugby, he joined the Sharks and has been awesome with the Sharks. Hasn't played very much because he's just played so much rugby over the past 8-9 months. He went straight from Super Rugby to Pro 14 I think he actually played for the Cheetahs in the Pro 14 and then signed with the Sharks. So he's been non-stop since Super Rugby started last year. So actually more probably like 12, 13 months. So that's a question mark. Maybe he won't be selected because just to give him a bit of a break. But awesome player when he's played, and he scored some pretty good tries this year as well. I think the other guy I've got down here is Dylan Lades. Not the most talented winger if you compare him to other wings in South Africa, but just his ability to be able to play virtually anywhere in the back line, can play 10, can play 12, probably even 13 if you wanted him, can play fullback and can play wing. So when I originally made the squad, I actually had him and another player who I'll get onto later. I didn't label them, I just put them as utilities who can fit in anywhere. So just to have a guy like Lades who can play anywhere and can really add to your depth. And when he does play in the wing, which I think is his best position, he played last year for the Springboks, put in some really, really solid performances. So I actually wouldn't be surprised if he was starting for the Springboks against England. Awesome player.
Yeah, on Lades, I think what his best attribute is the fact that he can take the pressure off anyone, anywhere. He's a winger. I guess wingers are involved in the match when they're given the ball, but he's the sort of guy that can come in and just take all the focus off whoever's starting at 10. Let's say Pollard starting at 10. You become predictable if you're giving the same guy the ball at first receiver. Yep. If it's always going 9-10, you can be reared a bit more. If you're mixing it up with a 12 who can move in, or in Lade's case, 14 to move in, is always a great asset that can make you a bit more unpredictable and give players more space in and around as well. So I think he'd be a shoo-in. I mean, for a squad like this, it's just where you'd put him as a player. To make up your numbers. Is he a winger? Is he a fullback? I mean, he's that versatile. He's a crazily good player. You talked about Yankees as well, which I didn't even mention because he's just not even been in the frame.
No.
It's been crazy how he's just not even been potentially, when you talk about fly halves who have been playing good and standing out for South Africa, he's not been there. The focus has been on him, but he's been miles off the mark.
Yeah, I've always been one of Yankees' biggest critics as well. When it comes to Test matches, I always said that when the stage is small, he performs brilliantly. But as soon as the stage gets bigger, especially in Test matches, he tends to crumble, and especially against the All Blacks, he's never put in a good performance against New Zealand. Obviously, we're not playing New Zealand this series, but England, even though they came fifth in the Six Nations, they'll be coming with a vengeance, and very similar structured team to how New Zealand would play. So, I'm just not a fan of him in the big moments. Having a fly half who is not a very good goal kicker, just even missing shots right in front of the post, which he does frequently, is just not something. It's not positive for team morale either. So, I wouldn't put him in the squad.
He's a confidence-based player as well, and it starts going wrong, it's always downhill from there too for him. So, not even in the reckoning of conversation. Whereas last year he'd probably be the first name on the team sheet, which I think is even more reason why that first line of fly halves, should they be selected, have to stay fit, because for the good of Springbok rugby as well, has to stay there. And I mean that's progressive, that's forward. Yankees has just not been in the scene today for this season for me at all. But we're talking about wingers. Here's some names. You're going to shoot these guys down because I don't even believe these guys are good enough. But on the fringe, a couple of Sharks boys. Nikosi, I think, has been okay. I'd give him a possibly, maybe see him there. And Volvo, no. I'm not one that will put him in the team at all. I think he's been rather average. Played a lot of fullback this season. Not really at his best spot. Tumbwe from the Lions. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, Tumbwe, he's sort of he came into the squad. I think he played a few games last year, if I'm not mistaken. Really impressed there. Came back. I can't even remember who it was against, but he just absolutely. I think it was against the Stormers. Scored a hat trick in a matter of minutes. Really, sort of another guy like Deontay. The Lions just seem to have these young guys coming from everywhere. They're hemorrhaging just young outside back talent right now. So, really good guy, but just not at the level yet. He hasn't shown that much enough to be in the Springbok squad anyway. And with Nkosi as well, another young guy. He should probably just be developed first rather than just rush into the team. Really good raw talent, but has to refine his skills before he should be considered seriously for a starting spot, especially.
And I think the guys that aren't selected because of the riches that they've got there already. I mean, if you probably didn't have a couple of those guys that you've named in your team already, those guys would probably get a bit of a look in, alongside probably the experience of like an Involver or something like that, just from lack of other choices. But it's not a bad thing for these guys to play another season of Super Rugby before they get a shot at that. They have the potential, but you gotta play it through. I mean, you look at Mapimpi. He stood out for the Kings. I mean, only good players stand out for the Kings. And normally that's 1 to 15 when they're on Super Rugby. So I'll just leave that there. Here's two for you to burn down. Raymond Rule, JP Peterson. Light the match.
Raymond Rule, awesome attacking player. Can really score quite well with counter-attack, but he's almost a carbon copy of Corner Hendricks. If everyone remembers, Corner Hendricks played for the Cheetahs a few years ago and was a starting winger for the Springboks for just a year, thank goodness. Just can't defend to save their lives. And I think people overlook how vital it is for your wingers to be able to defend, because the chances are the wings you're marking up on are the teams you're versing's best attackers as well. So you can't not be able to defend, and that's where guys like Combrick are so valuable. How they as good on defense as they are on attack. So, Rule shouldn't be considered. I'm quite a big fan of him, but he has to learn how to defend against quality wingers. JP Peterson should not be in contention at all. And I think it looks like you just wanted to create some talking points by adding him there, because I don't think anyone wants to see him back in the Springbok jersey. I'm a big fan of him, obviously, coming from the Sharks. Grew up watching him, so good. Formerly a good player, but just past his prime now, way past his prime. It's when he left the Sharks, he cleared away for a lot of young talent, which is what he should. He just shouldn't be selected.
I do. Raymond Rule, I agree. He's a fantastic attacker, and he has sparked a lot for the Stormers this season. But boy, he's cost them some tries as well. Probably more so than he's created. So I mean, those guys, Tumbwe and Nikosi, definitely future guys for the Springboks. But the rest of them, put them in the fire, throw them in the skip bin, and move on from there. Which we will do. So we got the fullbacks. And you got three coming into the team. Andres Kutsia from the Lions, Aurak Galant from the Bulls, and Curran Bosch from the Sharks. Curran Bosch really burst into the scene, especially last weekend with his silky smooth run that created that try for the Sharks. He actually got noticed in New Zealand as well. I mean, he's been around for a few years now, and they've finally just gone, oh, look, this kid, he's actually not bad. It's taken a long time, but it's not too much competition for the fullback. Warwick Galant definitely being the standout this season from the Bulls, stepping up to probably the potential that he's shown probably a couple of years now.
Yeah, you can't really argue with those three, and you can't really put many people. Villaroo is a possible person that you could put in. Has just won, I think, the Player of the Year or something like that for the London Wasps. Had a really good season over there. But LaRue has always done my head, and I won't get into too much with him because we're not really talking about him. But yeah, just his kicking and whatnot is just not up to par. But yeah, those three, Andres Kutsia, I think even though he hasn't been in the greatest form, I think he will get the starting jersey again this season, purely just because of his talent for kicking. And to my surprise, over the last 2 years, he's actually not too popular in South Africa with a lot of people on the different forums and whatnot. So people are not big fans of Kutsia and his kicking, but I think he's a valuable player. And especially against a team like England, you have to be able to kick well and to kick for territory. So it has a really big boot on him and a very passionate guy. Loves playing for the Springboks. Warwick Galant, best fullback in South Africa in terms of form this year for Super Rugby. Just his short distance kicking, his little chip kicks and behind the line, and his combination with Andre Pilot is definitely something to be feared. And he's been that up and coming guy that everyone's been talking of the last few years, and he hasn't really delivered too much over the last few years. But this season he's really come into his own. Again, a guy like John Mitchell coming in really complements guys like Galant's play style. So he's playing some good rugby, and he looks like he's enjoying himself as well. Kerwin Bosch actually moved out of position this year. He's actually done the opposite to what has happened with Damien McKenzie. He's actually a 10 that's been moved to fullback and has actually made the position his own. He's starting on the bench the first few games of the season for the Sharks, but has pushed Mvov out of the starting lineup, thank goodness. And has been playing really well. I still think 10 is his better position, but it's good to be able to have him and Robert Dupree both in the starting lineup. Kerwin Bosch can just create from anywhere. He is one of the fastest guys in the competition in Super Rugby. He has got some serious wheels on him. Got an absolutely massive boot. It's probably a negative thing for him at times because some of the stupid drop kicks he takes, like 60 meters out or something stupid like that. He likes to test himself during games. I think he hit one last year, and then ever since then he thinks he can hit them more, especially and he hit them at altitude as well, and he's trying them at sea level with Durban lately. But yeah, he's another young guy that needs to refine his skills, needs to maybe have better decision making sometimes, especially with those flipping drop kicks. But quality player, and it's hard to it's going to be hard to find a position for him because he's the other guy with Dylan Lades that I put as a utility player because he could probably play winger if you really wanted to, even though I don't want to see him put in wing, and he could probably play inside centre as well. So few positions for him. Fullback this year has been his position. So he might start, he might come off the bench. It's interesting to see what happens with him, and especially those three fullbacks. Huge competition, and I think it's going to be the guy who shows most in training that's going to get the nod for the first test.
Other guys unlucky to miss out. I think only one guy's probably lucky. I think his form just hasn't been up to scratch this season. SP Maria. Good last year, fantastic last year. Not being the same player in 2018.
No, I actually had I had Maria as I was going to include him as sort of a practice squad player, development player. I decided not to in the end. Was really good the first few rounds of rugby, but it was sort of falling off the radar a bit. He was at the Sharks a few years ago, and I've been following him ever since. Good to see him actually get the opportunity at the Stormers because it was looking like his career was actually about to end after a lot of injuries that held him back. So good to see him starting. Like you said, hasn't been the greatest form, was in blockbusting form last year, and I was actually surprised when he didn't get a selection last year. He just needs to keep working hard, pick up his form again, and hopefully by the end of your tour this year, he'll earn himself a spot.
Long shot from across in the Northern Hemisphere. Been talked about a bit from things I've read. Francois Steyn from Montpellier. I mean this guy was a revelation when he first burst onto the scene. Spent a long time away, back in, back out, all over the shop. The door's open again. A chance for another Steyn to come back into the Springboks fold?
Yeah, there's actually a lot of people make a lot of comparisons between him and Kerwin Bosch, just the style of players they are, the utility, the huge boot that they have, very, very similar players. Obviously, Kerwin Bosch has the better pace out of them, but Front Stain, I feel like I said, I was a lot. I've grown up with him, watching him at the Sharks. Really good player. Past his prime though, getting up there in age, he would be a good player to have on the fringes maybe, just as sort of a mentoring role. I'd like to see him teach Kerwin Bosch a few tricks in regards to his kicking and whatnot, but yeah, I didn't consider him at all for the squad.
I think looking at this and what we've talked about over this whole team, the positions where you've gone with the older guys are positions where the team is lacking a touch.
Yeah.
Probably the back row you could probably argue, but definitely at hooker. And the guys missing out, like the Stain who's talked about, missing out because there is good young talent in form performing at the moment for the Super Rugby sides, which is why they're not there. And you know, in the centres, De Jong is never going to get a chance because Delendi's not even getting himself in there, and he's it's just depth throughout the positions, which is what they need. And if anything, I guess having these guys available, like we see with the Argentinian situation at the moment, more players available, more pressure on positions, more competition, better performances from the players as well. So you see guys, Kutsia, the likes of him at fullback, knowing that the possibility and the talk of Francois Steyn coming into the team only puts pressure on him to perform better. So possibly a good thing. Bad things could come of this, of course, if they go back to the old retirement village and select all these old guys back, which you don't want to see fully. I think definitely if they did pick him, guys could learn a lot. The Kerwin Bosches of the world, definitely the Van Amervas, the Marks, those guys could learn a lot from the veteran players coming into the team. So will they go off that? What mix they go with will be interesting to see when they do name their team. But that is a little bit of an insight into Brett's mind of who's going to be selected for the Springboks in the Junior Internationals for 2018. That does wrap us up, the full team. I mean, that was quite interesting. Anything else you'd want to add on there for players? I think we've gone pretty deep on the whole thing there.
Yeah, just a quick thing. I didn't mention it all in the video because we'd probably gone on with it for hours and hours. The last time I mentioned it in your video, we talked about it for ages. Just the quota system, it's nothing, not really what you want to talk about, and I don't want to open a whole another can of worms here, but the squad I've picked will probably not resemble the squad that will be picked. I think there will be quite a few controversial predictions. I think it's actually 50% this year and then 55% next year. And Rusty Rasmus has been quite vocal in his support for this system. So, you guys like young kids, I think will find themselves in the squad purely because of that, which is not really what you want to be talking about. You want guys to really earn their spot, and you want guys who are Springboks to be able to say, I earned my spot here. So, I don't want to go too deep into that because that's something that you could talk about and debate for ages and ages. But, I just wanted to add that in, that the squad I've chosen probably won't. While I think a lot of players that they've selected will get into it, there'll be a lot of players I didn't select that will be showing their faces in here. I'm just crossing fingers that we don't see Rudy Page in the squad.
Yeah, but you did right though. I mean, you pick a team, you look at it, and you don't look at the player's face. You don't look at his skin color or anything like that. You just pick the player based on merit. You could listen to every game on the radio, and you could pick a squad based on what you've heard, based on form, things like that. It's irrelevant. But yes, it is a massive can of worms that will completely destroy your team. Because you're right, a lot of those guys, that's just not feasible with the way that it is, which is a shame because, I mean, that's form. Yeah. That's guys that are performing, and when you look at guys like I specifically, I've gone on about them a lot, but Esterhuizen and Ordendale, those guys, I think have done fantastically. And are my standouts of South African players who've stood up and just completely obliterated anything I thought of them before the season started. And to think that, those guys could miss out on the team based on something like that, it is sad. It really is just sad. And I want to see, and I want to see the All Blacks and the Wallabies, England, everyone that they're facing, playing the best South African team. Yeah. Because, like we always talk about, whenever we talk about any team, what's good for World Rugby is strength. And teams, numbers of teams being strong. South Africa being strong, Australia being strong, Georgia getting stronger, Samoa getting better. Everyone improving. And this is just things that always seem to hold the South Africans back, based on just adding things in that complicates everything over and over again. But alas, I do like your team. I would probably stick with most of that. I might change one or two, but that's about it. I did quite like your team. But no, otherwise, I think it's quite good. So I'm keen to see what everyone else thinks as well about Brett's side. It should be rolling up on the screen as we were talking about him. So let us know your thoughts and who you would chop out and add in to the side. Overall, though, I think it would be a damn strong Springboks team for the English to face next month. So that does wrap us up. Thank you very much for that, Brett. It's been a blast as always. You've gone far too in depth and far too long, but alas, on we go. How can everyone get hold of you and abuse your picks for the squad? Too many balls players, not enough.
Just Twitter at Brett Hartley 390. Feel free to give me as much stick as you want for my picks, and especially for picking guys like Bismarck and stuff who don't agree with it. Feel free to let me know, and I look forward to debating you and coming back with more reasons as to why I picked certain players. But it's been good. Thanks for having me on here.
No worries at all. I'm just looking through the teams that you got next to the names, and I'm just seeing there's quite an even mix. The forward pack, you kind of got more Bulls and Lions. The odd Shark and Storm were in there as well. But then the back line, it changes to more the Sharks and the Lions and probably more Bulls as well. It's probably the Stormers who have been a bit shorted out on that, which is interesting. But a nice rounded squad. I never thought of looking at where the teams actually come from. But yes, very good. That is us today. Thanks for tuning in and watching. We could go on forever, but we'll stop now because I have to edit and I have to sleep as well at some part of the day. So we'll see you all next time. Thanks for joining us. Until then, take care.